She was just having tea, until the Duke's mother forced her to pose as his fiancée in front of the entire court. The teacup trembled in Lady Anna T. Sanabria's grip, not from nervousness, but from the sheer audacity of what the woman in emerald silk had just whispered in her ear. "You need money. I need silence. My son needs a fiancée. You will be that fiancée, starting this very moment." Anna's breath caught. She had come to the royal palace's grand receiving hall to be invisible, to blend into the gilded furniture and painted walls, to nurse her tea and maintain the fragile illusion that the Sanabria family still belonged among the titled and wealthy. Instead, Erica F. Sheldon, the Dowager Duchess of Silverly, had seen through every careful lie, the mended lace at Anna's cuffs, the single strand of pearls where there should have been layers, the way she'd taken only one biscuit from the refreshment table though her stomach had been empty since breakfast. Your Grace, I don't understand." But Erica was already rising, her silver-white hair catching the chandelier light like a crown. The rustle of her gown commanded attention, and the court's chatter began to dim. "Ladies and gentlemen," Erica's voice rang clear across the marble hall, "I am delighted to announce the most joyous of news. My son, Allan D. Sheldon, Duke of Silverly, has at last chosen his bride." The room fell into stunned silence. Anna's teacup clattered against its saucer. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now, not to her. "The fortunate lady," Erica continued, extending one elegant hand toward Anna, "is Lady Anna T. Sanabria. Let us celebrate this union that will, I am certain, prove to be one of great happiness and fortune." The explosion of whispers came like a breaking dam. Anna sat frozen, her golden yellow gown suddenly feeling like a costume for a role she'd never auditioned for. Every eye in the hall fixed upon her, assessing, judging, dissecting. Erica leaned down once more, her smile gracious for the audience, but her words meant for Anna alone. "You may thank me later, my dear. For now, you will smile, accept congratulations, and meet me in the garden parlor in precisely 1 hour. Your life of careful invisibility has just become very, very public." The garden parlor smelled of jasmine and manipulation. Anna stood before an ornate mirror, watching her own pale reflection as if it belonged to a stranger. Somewhere in the palace's grand receiving hall, court society was still buzzing with speculation about the Duke of Silverly's sudden engagement to a woman most had barely noticed existed. Here, in this intimate chamber, with its sage-green wallpaper and oil paintings of pastoral landscapes, Anna was about to learn the terms of her new existence. "Your posture is excellent," Erica observed from her position on a velvet settee. She held a crystal glass of sherry, her emerald gown arranged in perfect folds. "That, at least, we won't need to correct, but your expression gives you away, child. You look like a woman who's been trapped in a gilded cage." "Because I have been," Anna said quietly. She turned from the mirror to face the Dowager Duchess directly. "Your Grace, with all respect, what you did out there was necessary." Erica set down her glass with a decisive clink. "Sit, Lady Anna. We have precisely 53 minutes before the first wave of congratulatory visits begins, and you need to know the story of how you captured my son's impossible heart." Anna's legs moved of their own accord, carrying her to a chair opposite Erica. Her mind raced through possibilities: flee, refuse, denounce the announcement as a misunderstanding. But each path led to the same destination: public humiliation and the final collapse of her family's already crumbling reputation. "You're considering your options," Erica noted with a thin smile. "I can see it in your eyes. But let me save you the trouble of calculation. If you refuse now, You'll be the woman who embarrassed the Duke of Silverly before the entire court. Your family's creditors, yes, I know about them, will hear of this scandal within a day. Whatever slim credit the Sanabria name still commands will evaporate entirely. The words landed like stones in Anna's stomach because they were true. All of them. However, Erica continued, her tone shifting to something almost businesslike. If you honor this arrangement for exactly 4 months, you will receive compensation of £3,000, enough to clear your family's debts, restore your estate, and ensure your mother and sisters want for nothing. £3,000. The number echoed in Anna's mind. It was more than salvation. It was resurrection. 4 months, Anna repeated slowly. And then? Then you and Allan will have a quiet, mutual parting. No scandal, no drama. You'll both agree that while the affection was genuine, you simply weren't suited for marriage. Very civilized, very modern. The court will gossip for a fortnight and then forget entirely. You'll return to your life with your finances secured and your reputation intact. Anna's fingers twisted together in her lap. And the Duke, he's agreed to this deception? Something flickered across Erica's face, a shadow of uncertainty quickly masked. Allan will agree once he understands the necessity. My son is brilliant but stubborn. He's refused every acceptable match for 5 years, and the whispers have grown vicious. Questions about his ability to produce an heir, speculation about his preferences, doubts about his fitness to lead the duchy. Her voice hardened. I will not allow my family's legacy to be destroyed by my son's romantic idealism. So you've sacrificed him and me to preserve appearances. I've given you both an opportunity, Erica corrected sharply. Allan gets 4 months of peace from the marriage market. You get financial security, and I get to silence the gossips who've made my son's bachelorhood a public scandal. Everyone benefits. Except we're all lying. Welcome to court society, my dear, where everyone is always lying about something. Erica stood, smoothing her gown. Now, let me tell you the story you'll be telling anyone who asks. You and Allan met 6 months ago at a philosophical lecture series hosted by Lord Pemberton. Very intellectual, very private, very much the sort of thing Allan would attend. You bonded over a debate about governmental reform. He found your mind refreshing after years of simpering debutantes. The courtship was conducted in quiet correspondence and private meetings, which is why no one observed it. Anna absorbed the fabricated history, each detail another brick in the wall of deception she was building around herself. You'll need to move into the ducal residence by tomorrow evening, Erica continued. No engaged couple of your standing would maintain separate households. I'll have your belongings collected discreetly. Your mother will be told that Allan wishes to observe propriety by having you close to his family. My mother will never believe this happened so quickly. Your mother, Erica interrupted gently, will believe anything that saves her from debtor's prison. Don't underestimate a parent's ability to accept what they need to be true. The cruelty of the observation stung precisely because Anna knew it was accurate. Her mother, who'd spent the last 3 years watching their lives disintegrate, would grasp at this unlikely engagement like a drowning woman seizing driftwood. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Your Grace, a servant announced. Lady Beaumont and the Countess of Westshire request an audience with Lady Anna to offer their congratulations. Erica's smile was triumphant. Perfect timing. Remember, my dear, you're deeply in love with a man you've been privately courting for months. Let that guide your performance. Anna rose on unsteady legs. Her golden yellow gown, which had felt like a shame-filled costume just hours ago, now felt like armor for a battlefield she'd never wanted to enter. One last thing, Erica said as Anna moved toward the door. Tomorrow morning, you'll meet Allan for the first time since this began. I suggest you prepare yourself. My son does not take well to manipulation, even when it's in his own interest. Anna paused with her hand on the door handle. And yet you've manipulated him anyway. Because I love him, Erica said simply. You'll understand that paradox soon enough. The door opened to reveal a gaggle of elegantly dressed women, their expressions ranging from genuine warmth to thinly veiled suspicion. Anna fixed a smile on her face, the smile of a woman who'd just captured the most eligible bachelor in the kingdom, and stepped forward into her new life of beautiful, necessary lies. Behind her, through the doorway, she could hear Erica already preparing the next act of this elaborate performance. And somewhere in London, a duke who knew nothing of his engagement was about to discover that his mother had once again rewritten his life without permission. Anna's only consolation was this. At least she'd been honest about one thing. She was doing this for money. And she wouldn't apologize for her family's survival. Not to the court, not to the Dowager Duchess, and certainly not to the furious duke she'd be meeting tomorrow morning. The ducal residence loomed before Anna like a stone rebuke to her presumption. She'd been summoned at precisely 9 o'clock. The note delivered to her modest townhouse by a servant whose livery probably cost more than everything in Anna's wardrobe combined. Now, standing in Allan D. Sheldon's private study, she understood that yesterday's performance had merely been the overture to a far more dangerous confrontation. The Duke stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, tension radiating through every line of his tall frame. Dark hair, immaculate formal attire in deep blue, shoulders rigid with fury. He hadn't turned around since the butler announced her, and the silence stretched like a blade between them. "So," he said finally, his voice cold and precise as winter frost. "You're the woman my mother has decided I'm to marry. For 4 months, Your Grace, not permanently." Now he turned, and Anna forced herself not to step back from the force of his anger. His grey eyes were sharp enough to dissect lies, his aristocratic features arranged in an expression of absolute contempt. "And you agreed to this farce? Sold yourself to the highest bidder like some—" "Yes," Anna interrupted, her chin lifting. "I did, for £3,000, because my family faces ruin. Our creditors are circling like vultures, and your mother offered me a way to save everyone I love from complete destruction. So yes, Your Grace, I agreed to pose as your fiancée in exchange for money. I won't apologize for choosing survival." The bluntness of her admission seemed to steel his prepared diatribe. Allan stared at her, recalibrating. "You're not even going to pretend you had noble motivations? No protestations that you were forced? No tears? Would tears change your opinion of me?" "No." "Then I won't waste them." Anna met his gaze steadily. "I understand you're furious at your mother's manipulation. You have every right to be. But I'm not your enemy, and I'm not going to grovel for making a choice that keeps my family from debtor's prison." Something shifted in Allan's expression. Not warmth, but perhaps a grudging respect for her refusal to play act. He moved to his desk, extracting a document covered in dense script. "My mother has put us both in an impossible position. However, I won't compound her scheming by handling this dishonorably. If we're to maintain this charade, it will be done properly." "Meaning?" "Meaning you'll move into this residence today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. We'll maintain appearances at every necessary court function, and you'll conduct yourself as a woman genuinely attached to me. In return, you'll receive the promised compensation in increments, 1,000 now, 1,000 at 2 months, 1,000 when we part." He held up the contract. All terms documented and legally binding. Anna stepped forward to examine the document. His handwriting was precise, every clause carefully constructed. "You drafted this yourself?" "This morning, while imagining various ways to murder my mother without facing legal consequences. His tone remained arctic, but there was something almost wry beneath it. I assume you can read contracts. I can read, Your Grace. My poverty didn't extend to illiteracy. Good. Because if you violate any term, if you speak to the press, if you attempt to extend this arrangement beyond 4 months, if you behave in any way that brings scandal to my family, you'll receive nothing and face legal action. Understood. Anna reached for the pen he offered. And if you violate the terms? For the first time, something like surprise crossed his features. Then you'll have legal recourse to claim triple the amount. Fair enough. She signed with a steady hand, each stroke of the pen another step into a bargain she couldn't unmake. Allan signed after her, then folded the document with sharp, angry precision. Your belongings will arrive this afternoon. The butler will show you to your rooms. We have a state dinner on Friday where we'll make our first official appearance together. I suggest you prepare yourself, Lady Anna. Everyone in that room will be looking for cracks in our performance. Then we won't give them any. Anna turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Your Grace, I didn't want this either, but I'm going to honor our agreement to the letter. See that you do. His voice followed her out. Because unlike my mother, I don't believe in second chances. The door closed behind her with a definitive click, and Anna released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. 4 months. She could survive anything for 4 months. Even a duke who looked at her like she'd stolen something precious he'd never wanted in the first place. Anna's rooms in the family wing were more beautiful than anything she'd inhabited in years. Cream silk wallpaper, a 4-poster bed with damask curtains, windows overlooking gardens so precisely manicured they looked like paintings. Her modest belongings, transported that afternoon as Allan had commanded, seemed almost embarrassed to occupy such grandeur. She hung her 3 decent gowns in a wardrobe built to house 30, arranged her grandmother's jewelry box on a vanity meant for a duchess's treasure, and tried not to feel like an imposter in borrowed finery. The first public appearance came 3 days later at Lord Harrington's state dinner. Anna descended the grand staircase in a gown Erica had commissioned, deep sapphire silk that made her auburn hair look like polished copper, and found Allan waiting in the entrance hall. He wore formal black, his expression carefully neutral, but when he offered his arm, his grip was steady and almost reassuring. Remember, he murmured as their carriage rolled toward the Harrington estate. We met at Pemberton's lecture series. You found my opinions on parliamentary reform hopelessly idealistic. I found your pragmatism refreshing. And we've been conducting a secret courtship ever since, Anna finished. I know the script, Your Grace. Allan, he corrected quietly. In public, you'll call me Allan. Formality between engaged couples invites suspicion. At the dinner, he transformed into someone Anna barely recognized. The cold, furious man from his study disappeared, replaced by an attentive fiancée who anticipated her needs before she voiced them, ensuring her wineglass stayed filled, deflecting intrusive questions with practiced charm, his hand settling possessively at the small of her back when Lord Pemberton expressed surprise at their supposedly months-long acquaintance. Anna found herself responding with equal skill, laughing at his dry observations, touching his arm with calculated affection, playing the role so convincingly she sometimes forgot it was performance. But the library became their truth. Anna discovered it on her 4th evening in the residence, wandering restlessly through corridors too vast for sleep. The double doors stood ajar, golden lamplight spilling into the darkened hallway. She found Allan there, seated in a leather chair with a volume of Edmund Burke. his formal attire replaced by shirt sleeves and waistcoat, looking more human than she'd yet seen him. He glanced up, something like resignation crossing his features. "Can't sleep either. The bed's too comfortable. I keep expecting to wake up back home." A ghost of understanding flickered in his eyes. He gestured to the shelves surrounding them, floor-to-ceiling mahogany filled with leather-bound volumes. "Feel free to borrow anything, though I warn you my collection skews toward political philosophy and probably terrible poetry." She chose Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication and settled into the chair opposite his. They read in silence for perhaps 30 minutes before Allan spoke. "What do you think of her argument about women's education?" Anna looked up, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his question. "I think she's absolutely right that rational thought isn't limited by sex, though I suspect she underestimates how violently society will resist that truth. Pragmatic and cynical, consistent with your character." But his tone held no accusation, only observation. "And you? Do you believe women capable of the same intellectual rigor as men?" "I believe intelligence distributes itself without regard to gender, class, or propriety. Society's failure to acknowledge this is its own loss." He paused, though admitting that opinion publicly would make me even more unmarriageable than my mother claims. Something loosened in Anna's chest, a recognition of kindred isolation. Then perhaps we're well matched after all, at least in our mutual unsuitability for polite society. Allan's mouth curved into something almost resembling a smile. Perhaps. The library became their refuge after that, following each exhausting public performance. The Beaumont ball where they danced 3 waltzes, the garden party where Allan actually laughed at her observation about Lady Worthington's truly remarkable hat. They'd retreat to those leather chairs. They debated Locke's theories of government, argued about Byron's latest scandal, discussed whether Bonaparte's exile would truly hold. The conversations grew longer, deeper, less guarded. One evening, 2 weeks into her residence, Anna realized with quiet alarm that she'd been speaking for 20 minutes about agricultural reform, and Allan had been listening with complete attention, occasionally challenging her assumptions, but never dismissing them. "You actually care about these topics," she said, the observation escaping before she could contain it. "Did you think I only pretended intellectual interest to avoid dancing?" "I thought—" Anna hesitated. "I thought you might be pretending, like we pretend everything else." Allan closed his book slowly, his grey eyes meeting hers with uncomfortable directness. "Whatever else is false between us, Lady Anna, this isn't. These conversations are the only honest thing in my life right now." The admission hung in the lamplight between them, dangerous and undeniable. Anna should have made some deflecting comment, should have retreated behind the safety of their arrangement. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Mine too." The clock in the hall chimed midnight. Neither moved to leave. 2 months had passed like a carefully choreographed dance. Public performances of affection, private evenings of comfortable silence in Allan's library, and somewhere along the way, something neither of them had planned for. The royal ball glittered around Anna like a constellation of jewels and judgment, but she'd grown accustomed to the scrutiny. Her new wardrobe, courtesy of the arrangement, fit her properly now. No more mended lace or single strands of pearls. Tonight she wore deep burgundy silk that made her auburn hair seem to catch fire in the candlelight. Allan stood beside her, playing his role with the ease of 2 months' practice. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that had started as performance but now felt natural, almost protective. They'd just finished a waltz, his grey eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her forget they were pretending. "Lady Anna, Lord Wickham approached, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. How fortuitous for you, securing such an advantageous match. Though I confess I'm still puzzled how the Duke overlooked more established families in favor of— His pause was calculated cruelty. Such modest circumstances. The insult landed with surgical precision. Around them, conversation dimmed as courtiers waited to see how Anna would respond. She'd learned to deflect such attacks with grace, to smile through the barbs that questioned her worthiness. But Allan moved before she could speak. Wickham. His voice dropped to a temperature that could freeze wine in the glass. He stepped forward, placing himself subtly between Anna and the other nobleman. I chose Anna because she possesses something your established families conspicuously lack: intelligence, integrity, and the ability to engage in conversation beyond gossip and social climbing. If you find that puzzling, perhaps you should examine the limitations of your own comprehension, rather than questioning my judgment. The silence that followed was absolute. Lord Wickham's face flushed crimson. He stammered something about meaning no offense, and retreated into the crowd like a scalded dog. Allan's hand found Anna's elbow, guiding her toward the terrace doors. Some air, he murmured to those nearby, the explanation smooth and practiced. But his grip was firm, protective, and Anna's heart hammered against her ribs for reasons that had nothing to do with Wickham's insult. They didn't speak until they reached the library hours later, both having made their excuses to leave the ball early. The familiar room welcomed them with the scent of leather and paper, lamplight casting warm shadows across the spines of thousands of books. This space had become theirs, where they debated philosophy until midnight, where Allan's stern facade cracked to reveal dry wit and unexpected kindness, where Anna felt more herself than anywhere else in the ducal residence. You didn't need to defend me, Anna said quietly, setting down her wrap. I've weathered worse than Wickham's petty cruelty. I know. Allan moved to pour 2 glasses of brandy, a ritual they'd developed. You're more than capable of handling yourself. That's not why I did it. Then why? He handed her a glass, his fingers brushing hers. The contact lasted a moment too long. Because hearing him speak to you that way made me want to challenge him to a duel. Because the thought of anyone diminishing you— He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Because we have an arrangement to maintain, and tolerating insults to my supposed fiancée would undermine our credibility. The excuse was flimsy, and they both knew it. Anna sipped her brandy, using the moment to steady herself. Allan, this arrangement has 6 weeks remaining, he finished, his tone carefully neutral. Yes, I'm aware. Something hung between them, unspoken and dangerous. 2 months of evenings like this had built something neither had anticipated. Anna had discovered that beneath his sternness lived a man who argued passionately about governance reform, who remembered how she took her tea, who'd quietly arranged for her mother's remaining debts to be cleared early. And Allan, she'd seen how he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, as though trying to solve an equation that kept changing variables. 6 weeks, Anna echoed. The words tasted bitter. Allan set down his glass with deliberate care. Perhaps we should review the contract terms, ensure we're both clear on the parameters of our business arrangement. Yes. Anna forced brightness into her voice. Wouldn't want any confusion about what this is. What this isn't, she meant. What it can never be, no matter how much these stolen library hours felt like the most honest thing in her life. Precisely. But Allan's jaw tightened, and his eyes held hers for one breathless moment before he turned away. I should let you rest. We have the garden party tomorrow. Anna nodded, not trusting her voice. She left the library with her heart in fragments, understanding with painful clarity that the most dangerous thing about a beautiful lie is when it starts feeling like truth. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered with the rest of Anna's correspondence on a silver tray. Her mother's handwriting covered the page in breathless, joyful loops. The creditors had been paid, every single one. The estate's accounts were clear, the mortgages satisfied, and there was even enough remaining to repair the roof and hire back 2 of the servants they'd dismissed years ago. Her mother's gratitude poured off the page like sunlight. Gratitude to Anna, to the Duke, to Providence itself for this miraculous salvation. Anna set the letter down with hands that trembled slightly. She should have felt triumphant, vindicated, released. Instead, she felt a creeping dread that started in her chest and spread outward like winter frost. 1 month remained. 30 days until this arrangement dissolved and she returned to her real life, the life she'd supposedly been saving all along. 30 days until Allan D. Sheldon stopped being her fiancé, stopped debating philosophy with her in his library until dawn, stopped looking at her across the breakfast table with that expression she'd learned to recognize as his version of contentment. You're staring at that letter as if it contains news of a death rather than a resurrection. Anna looked up to find Erica standing in the doorway of the morning room, elegant as always in deep plum silk. The Dowager Duchess had developed an unsettling ability to appear precisely when Anna's thoughts grew dangerous. "My family's debts are cleared," Anna said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Everything we agreed upon has been achieved." "Yes, everything we agreed upon." Erica moved into the room, closing the door behind her with deliberate care. "And yet, you look like a woman facing an execution." "I'm simply tired, Your Grace." "Don't insult my intelligence." Erica settled into the chair opposite Anna, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "I've watched you and my son for 3 months now. I've seen how he looks for you when he enters a room. I've noticed that his study door remains open only when you're in the library. I've observed that the conversations at breakfast have become the highlight of his day." Anna's throat tightened. "We've played our parts well, as contracted. You've built something real." Erica's voice carried an unexpected gentleness. "And now you're preparing to destroy it because you're terrified of what it's become." "It was never meant to become anything. That was the entire point of the arrangement. The arrangement was my manipulation. What you and Allan have created despite it, that's entirely your own." Erica leaned forward. "I've known my son his entire life. He's never been comfortable with anyone the way he is with you. You challenge him. You match him. You don't perform for him. Because the performance was always for everyone else." "Precisely." Erica's smile was knowing. "With each other you've been honest. That's rarer than love in our world, my dear, and far more dangerous to walk away from." Before Anna could respond, voices rose from the entrance hall. Allan's deep tones mixed with others, court visitors by the sound of it. Erica rose smoothly, adjusting her skirts. "They've come to inquire about the wedding date," she said quietly. "The court's patience has worn thin. They want commitment or confession. There's no middle ground left." Anna's stomach dropped. "What will Allan tell them?" "That depends entirely on what he believes you want to hear." Erica paused at the door. "The fiction you've maintained is collapsing under the weight of reality. You can let fear guide you back to safety, or you can choose the terrifying possibility that this was always meant to be more than a transaction." She swept from the room, leaving Anna alone with her mother's joyful letter and the sound of Allan's voice in the hall, answering questions she couldn't hear. 1 month remained. 30 days to decide whether salvation also meant surrendering the one thing she hadn't meant to find. Outside, clouds gathered over London like a judgment waiting to fall. Anna's trunks stood packed and ready in the entrance hall of her rooms, a silent testament to the agreement she'd honored to the letter. 4 months, 122 days of playing the devoted fiancée, of learning Allan's dry humor and fierce intelligence, of late-night debates in his library that felt more real than anything else in her carefully constructed life. And now it was ending, exactly as promised. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt hollowed out. Running away in the middle of the night. Allan's voice came from the doorway, rough with something that might have been anger or grief. "I expected better from you." Anna turned slowly, finding him in shirt sleeves and waistcoat, his dark hair disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it. No ducal formality now, just Allan looking at her with those grey eyes that had somehow learned to see straight through her defenses. "I'm honoring our contract," she said quietly. 4 months. We agreed. That contract stopped meaning anything 2 months ago, and you know it. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "So tell me why you're really leaving." "Because this is what we agreed, Anna." Her name on his lips was both plea and command. The truth, not the performance. The truth. How could she explain that the truth terrified her more than any lie ever had? Anna wrapped her arms around herself, armor against vulnerability. "Because you'll always see me as the woman who took money to pretend to love you. Because every time we argue or I disappoint you, you'll remember that our beginning was a transaction. That I sold myself for £3,000. Is that what you think?" Allan moved closer, his voice dropping to something raw and honest. "That I've spent these months calculating your worth in currency? Haven't you?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I was bought, Allan. Your mother paid for me like furniture for the ducal residence. That stain doesn't wash away just because we've enjoyed each other's company." "You're right." His admission struck like a blow. "Your beginning here was a transaction. But do you know what I see when I look at you now?" He was close enough that she could see the intensity burning in his eyes. "I see the only person in my entire life who has never lied to me about who she is. You didn't simper or flatter. You didn't pretend affection you didn't feel. You stood in my study and told me the brutal truth, that you chose survival over pride, and that honesty became the foundation of everything between us." Anna's throat tightened. "Allan." "I've felt more myself with you than with anyone," he continued, the words spilling out as though too long contained. "Every debate we've had, every argument, every moment you've challenged my assumptions, that's been real. You've seen past the Duke to find Allan, the man who reads philosophy at midnight and believes governmental reform matters more than social climbing. No one else has ever bothered to look that deeply. But the contract, damn the contract." His hand caught hers, warm and solid. "I'm not asking you to stay because of an agreement my mother forced upon us. I'm asking you to marry me, not as the Duke of Silverly fulfilling an obligation, but as Allan choosing the only person who's ever truly known him." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Anna stared at their joined hands, at the man who'd transformed from furious stranger to something far more dangerous, someone she loved. What if it doesn't work? What if the court never lets us forget how this started? Then we'll face them together. His free hand came up to cup her face with unexpected tenderness. "You taught me that. Survival isn't weakness, Anna. That choosing to live, to fight, to accept help, those are acts of courage. Now let me be brave enough to choose you." Not because of duty or deception, but because you're the only truth I've found in a lifetime of beautiful lies." Tears blurred her vision, not from sorrow, but from the terrifying hope unfurling in her chest. "I'm afraid." "So am I." Allan's smile was crooked, vulnerable. "But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe with anyone else." Anna thought of the packed trunks, the careful exit she'd planned, the protection of walls she'd built around her heart. Then she thought of late nights in the library, of Allan's rare laughter, of the way he'd looked at her during the royal ball, as though she was the only person in the room worth seeing. She'd agreed to 4 months of pretending, but somewhere along the way, the performance had become truth. "Ask me again," she whispered. "Without the contract, without the arrangement, just you and me." Allan's expression softened into something achingly genuine. "Anna T. Sanabria, will you marry me? Not because my mother orchestrated this, not because of money or obligation, but because I love you and cannot imagine my life without you in it." "Yes." The word felt like freedom. "Yes, I'll marry you." When he kissed her, it tasted like the end of deception and the beginning of something honest, a vow neither of them would ever break.